Meta's working on generative text-to-video to make that available to like people like us soon.
What was it like working out when you traveled? Because you just came back from an event, didn't you?
Well, yeah, exactly. Deload week, perfect. Like perfect timing for Deload week, because it was also Speak at Meta's Performance Summit week in Melbourne. It was kind of cool. Like I got to catch up with Richard from July, even though like we kind of graduated them into taking stuff in house. But at the Meta thing was dope. Should we talk about the Meta thing?
Yeah, let's segue into it. I'd love to hear what's going on with July, because I know they've been opening up retail stores. That's
yeah, man. They're in the UK now. They're opening up a store. I think their biggest Aussie store is going to open up in my town in Brisbane, so which is wild. And it's just funny too, right? Like we were just jamming, like Richard and I just jamming about like how everyone's talking about like D2C like only. And I was like, it's funny how the conversation took D2C as a business rather than as a channel, like a sales channel. Like retail is a sales channel. Amazon is a sales channel. Like direct to consumer is yet another sales channel, as opposed to an entire business, like the premise of entire business. So we just nerded out about stuff like that. Talked about some influencer stuff because he just wants to have some fairly like, he wants to get to the point. He was really fascinated by like whitelisting influencer accounts. Like, how do we get to that point where it's like we know the right influencers that when whitelist the account? So nerded about stuff like that. And then he was like, "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow at the Meta event." I think my team signed me up. Clearly, his team didn't sign him up because he wasn't there. But I mean, the event itself, the Meta Summit itself was pretty cool. Very jam-packed kind of day. They call it a day, but it's like 4.5 hours, right? And they just crammed everything in there. I personally, sorry Meta, but I braced myself, even though I was one of the, like speaking on one of the fireside chats, I was bracing myself for like a super salesy, like Meta's awesome. And, just spend more during the learning phase. Cause it's real, right?
Dude, this structure, Power 5.
Yeah, totally. Right. And they did talk a little bit about that. Like, that was called Performance 5. It's kind of pretty much just like a reskinned Power 5, post ATT. But what was real? So this was really cool. The way that they opened the day was, and I took a few picks. So I'm gonna show everyone what the picks are, and then go from there. So there was this one talk that was all about how AI is playing a role in, and I think it's timely for them because like machine learning's been around for so long with Meta. But for the longest time, remember like back before, back before iOS 14, maybe like, I guess it was hottest, like maybe 2016, 17, 18, maybe even 19, that whole like, we're smarter than the machine. Don't listen to what your reps tell you. Do like, just manipulate the shit out of it, right? Like try day parting and all these other types of methods. So now, and back then AI wasn't as consumer understood compared to now that there's like ChatGPT, there's all this generative AI. So I think it helps them explain stuff a lot easier because a lot more people get it. Like they get how ChatGPT kind of sort of works, or they've played around with it. So, like the speaker was like, yeah, we've been doing machine learning way longer than like this whole AI wasn't invented just this year, guys. Like it's been part of it for us. So they're doubling down.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did they mention how they might have changed or adjusted their AI since post iOS 14?
Exactly. So that's that's part of this kind of high level intro talking about what the presenter's name was Oliver, and he was talking about how like what intentions they have at Meta to in terms of AI for the near future, right? So one big one that I'm sharing on the screen now is like this whole discovery engine part, right? And you're going to get into you put it on the agenda for us to get into Google later, which is so much more like intent search based, stronger signals that way. So then clearly Meta's going, well, we're going discovery based, which makes sense. You know, you're on your feed, you're discovering new things. But the point being, if you can see here, it's 2x the AI recommendation volume by the end of this year. And then they just want to trend higher from that point, right? Based off of your usage, your location, like all that type of stuff.
What does that mean exactly? AI recommendations for who, the consumers?
Yeah, for Meta users. So like on IG and all, like on different places.
Is that recommendations for ads or just anything? Because like on my Instagram feed, like I notice a lot more discovery coming through than previously. Is it just for ads, including
and I think in, like, content to engage with, right? Because it's like, okay, well, if you look at how sticky, like what makes TikTok sticky? Well, it's they don't run off of engagement engine. They ran off of a content consumption engine. So if you're consuming that style of content, you know, like that's what the algorithm's like primed against. So then it just feeds you more of that same type, as opposed to the old style Facebook's original engine was around like likes, comments, shares. So that gave a certain post points, right? As opposed to TikTok, which was like, well, if this thing gets views and it's sticky, that's what gives it points. And then secondarily to that would be all the engagement metrics. So I think they're taking a page out of that book and then putting it in here to go, what are the signals that we are taking into consideration? And then let me see if I have the photos in the right order, because this is all from that same one talk. The next photo that I took was this one, like how they're rebuilding their ad stack to that whole ATT thing. So from an ad engine infrastructure standpoint, they've got a lot of modeling thing going on. He just kept it really, really high level. And then I don't quite remember what he meant by the experiences portion. Luckily, the team and I, did I tell you that Luke's coming to the Sydney one? So we got a second pass.
No, he did not.
Because I got invited to the Sydney one as well. So Luke, Danny, and I think Stanley's thinking about flying back from South Korea to head over to that event. So maybe I might be able to come back I'll be able to pay a bit more attention and come back with more.
That'd be a good talk. Especially to get their opinion, right? Because they run the ads for us. Like, yeah, it'd be really good to see how that lines up with what's working internally.
Yeah, totally. Here's the cool part. The part that I didn't know, Meta's working on generative text-to-video to make that available to like people like us soon. So this was an actual test that they kind of showed internally. So text-to-video, image-to-video, which is kind of cool. And I've been playing around a lot with generative art AI. So I've got a Midjourney account. I've also got like a Runway ML. I don't know if you ever tried Runway ML or Kyber. So
just Midjourney.
Midjourney, right? It's like imagine Captain America as a 70-year-old man, and then pops out like, you know, images. Text to video in Runway ML, you're typing in text and generating 4 seconds of video based off of that text. And some of the stuff that it spat out, because I joined in, I guess, the first beta, I managed to sneak myself in there. Just the strides with each release is insanity. So I think by next year, it's going to be wild. So the fact that like Meta's jumping in there too, because they're part of a lot of the enabling tech. They've launched Llama, open source AI, and stuff like that. So they're making that available. They're also putting forward like an AI sandbox. I know the text is a bit small, but to be able to create like text variations, backgrounds against like a PNG file that you feed it for your product images and stuff.
I was going to ask about that. Like if you feed it some kind of like a 3D model or like a vector.
Yeah, man. I think
or something that has like a background it'll allow you to place it over it, like overlay.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going for sure. And then, like the whole bunch of stuff around Performance 5, measurement, attribution, that type of stuff that they, that usually comes with their webinars and those and resources, like the whole Facebook best practices, facebook.com/business. And then you've got all those types of things. They've got that in there too. I don't want to make this this call all about that, this one episode, but if they're, I don't know, if people see this and they want us to go a bit deeper, we could probably make like that whole thing a session. Especially I think after the Sydney one. And also the cool thing is I spoke to, not our rep, because Julia, good for you. You're in Bali. You get to like leave us and go to Bali. But I spoke to the rest of her team, and they said, "Yo, if you want us to make this available for you, we can do that too."
For which part exactly? The AI?
No,
AI?
the actual slides itself. And also if we wanted any of the presenters to come like do a virtual version for like our audience, they're like, yeah, let's talk to make.
I almost want them to come just to talk about how measurement, how complex it is, right? Because for people like us that are in it every single day, even though we have platforms like Northbeam, Triple Whale, Elevar, their attribution tools, they're not 100% perfect. So I think just for that, so brands can even hear from the horse's mouth from Meta that it is complex and it is a really hard challenge. So you have to kind of play with it and play the game despite of it rather than trying to solve it.
Yeah,
that's a
totally.
$30-50 million fund.
Totally. And I think like also at the same time, right, the average brand owner who doesn't who, I don't know, comes from like a product focus or a fashion focus or a customer focus, to expect them to be able to, like I see so many marketers get pissed off when they're like, attribution is not the same as measurement. Measurement is not the same as attribution. You need to know the difference. It's like, yes, in our line of work, absolutely, we need to know the difference. But I think to expect like a founder, like a brand, brand first, product first, fashion first type founder to understand it to that like degree, I think it's super unreasonable. They took a stab at it. They had a measurement and they brought on heads of analytics for Les Mills and for, I want to say Zero, like the bookkeeping web app, right? The bookkeeping SaaS. And these people are like head of data and attribution. That's their only job. And even they were like, this stuff is one, really, really complex, and two, complex in our types of businesses because you need buy-in from so many different, you need buy-in from the CFO. You need buy-in from the brand team, right? You need them to be able to explain in non-condescending language why you can't just go first touch only and judge the entire like business's performance marketing on first touch or last touch. Or, so the banner of that talk was like Measurement 360. I think they did a decent job. I could see that it flew over a lot of people's heads in the audience because it was a mix of like, digital marketers, performance marketers, brand marketers, as well as brand owners. Right.
It kind of makes me surprised that Meta hasn't played around with different attribution models. And what I mean by that is, so for example, even Google has different models you can use. They have first touch, last touch, first and last touch, linear, decay, and they also have now data, the data model attribution. What's interesting is that before they released data, linear was really cool because it would give an equal weighting to every touch point, right? So you had some kind of semblance of if one campaign or ad had more, maybe it was getting more touches, right? So you still had some data, something you can play with and get your head wrapped around. Where now they have data attribution where it uses machine learning to give a weighted average to the touch point at where it actually happened in the conversion cycle. So if for whatever reason, it's kind of a black box, if Google thinks this click had a bigger impact out of all the touch points in this person converting, they'll give a higher weighted average to it. And now it's a black box. They don't tell you exactly how they do it, but it's really surprising that Meta hasn't rolled out these different types of models to help advertisers make better decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also this was part of the conversation that, because we had a lunch after the event and we were just nerding out a bit about the whole measurement and attribution piece. and how, one truism around attribution is that almost you look at enough data from a pure play analytics standpoint, and you can see quite quickly that almost every customer journey is unique, right? It almost becomes unproductive to plot patterns. It's not like there's an 80% use case of a customer journey to then be able to say, okay, we can optimize against that. So then, the topic, like, what a fucking boring lunch, but for like a regular person to sit in on. But we were getting all excited, like, yeah, like, what's the point then? Like, because if there's no 80%, then is it even worthwhile doing? And if every single one is unique, then shouldn't we just treat it like unique rather than have like a complex system? And like, people at the next table were like, who the hell are these? This is a pub. Like, what's going on here?
I've always wondered what kind of food is at a Meta event. So you guys went to a restaurant that was kind of, I guess,
we weren't even. They put up a really, really good catering, but it was kind of awkward. We were because it was a small group. The VP of the Asia Pacific region invited a few of us over to like a pub away from the event for lunch. And then one of the fireside panelists walked up to me. He's like, and I was standing next to the VP, and he was like, "Hey, so there's this lunch thing I heard that's happening," and he meant like the host, right, that wrapped up the event said, "Oh, by the way, there's lunch outside. You just got to go look around for it. It's right there." But we thought he was like self-invite to the lunch. So we're like, so what lunch are you talking about? And then he found out that he wasn't part of this lunch that we were going to. He just straight up was like, oh, yeah, fine. And he just walked off. It was so awkward. I was like, oh man, that was weird. But yeah, it was decent food. Decent food for sure. But yeah, the attribution conversation was super interesting. So yeah, measurement 360 is what they were talking about. And to give you some idea, like both Zero and Les Mills, I don't want to speak for them, but from what I recall, it took 9 to 12 months for each of their initiatives to actually get implemented, like their measurement their measurement 360.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So like the head of measurement for I guess head of data for Zero, she's like, yeah, we're still midway in our initiative, still trying to like push through and have a learning path and all that. So the advice there was like, have a learning path before you even start. I guess like, for us, it's kind of like having A3 problem solving. It's like before you even start the plan, kind of figure out what the goal is and set the, your strategy down and break it down into phases, and you stage the whole thing. 9 to 12 months, man. 9 to 12 months of like... Is
that Meta helping with that? Or is it they're just using them as an example that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they involve exactly. They involve Meta with that as one of the, people with table stakes, I guess, or input, and then, data partners, and, they'll either have like a segment or a Telium, right? All that stuff kind of put in there.
I wonder how much of that time lag is actual work, or just time lag between interfacing between different teams. So I remember, what was it? Probably a year or two? No, 2 years ago, we were part of an alpha test actually, where it was we were one of the first brands to test running ads to shops, Facebook shops.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. So if you remember, they gave us $500,000 for this brand for this alpha test. And I remember now, as you're talking, it took 3 months just to get the thing launched, because it was okay, how are we going to structure it? And we sent it to them. Then they get back to us in 2 weeks. Then we'll say, actually, we want to do it this way. So then we change it, get back to us another 2 or 3 weeks. So it's like a lot of lag in between. So that's why it took so long to launch it. Because 12 months sounds like a long time for an initiative. But if it's not all on you, then that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And if you're working in a big company like that, and like executive level or SVP layer isn't bought in, they're just going to be showing up like once a month or like, doing your quarterly performance review and being like, what the hell is happening here? Like, come on, how hard can it be? GA4, plug it in. It's there, right? Like, they know enough to be dangerous to ask those types of questions, but not enough to really know what's involved in the work, right? So, yeah, it's a challenge for sure, right? So if you're, my thought is, if you're running a small business type, you're not like at $100 million revenue, right? Trying to slice and dice every single attribution touch point, like every touch point and attribute, and then go like, I need to know pure play. What is this channel bringing me? What is that channel bringing me? What is that channel bringing me? Without thinking about it blended, you're just going to dig yourself into this rabbit hole that might not even be worth your time and effort, compared to, I don't know. I always like joke around with it. It's like looking at your basketball team and then only looking at the players that score baskets, almost disregarding assists. Like, okay, well, let's fire the people that do the assists. What the hell do you think is going to happen here?
Also opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, think about basketball. Someone may not have had an assist, but they set you up with just the right block, and they never touched the ball, but actually set up the assist to then actually make the basket. So opportunities too.
All that stuff. Like, who are your Rodmans, right? Like, which of your platforms are your Rodmans that just like is the one that just kind of just stonewalls everyone, hardly ever touches the ball, but lets the people that touch the ball do what they need to do. Like, if you only want a Jordan on your team and only spend money on the Jordan, then that Jordan's not going to be Jordan for very long. That's the way that, like, it's a really helpful analogy for my monkey brain to be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, it's hard for brands that don't do this every day too. Like, maybe they're a fashion brand and they're creative, right? They started their brand because they have a vision for a product, a style, whatever that is. And now they're thrust into this world of attribution and assisted conversions. And it's hard for them to know, okay, where do I make the right call, the right decision? And the reality is, directionally, you can make certain calls, but then sometimes you actually have to go on a journey to find out what's the best blended budget allocation. Like, what do incremental lift studies, for example. So it's not easy for people that don't have it. So that's why, honestly, man, I feel like the cure-all is trying to have a step away from caring so much about attribution. And because, like, you can go into Shopify, look at every order, and it'll tell you like what channel that thing came from, and you'll drive yourself crazy. But I think instead is directionally, if you can find that a platform is working, then you go about, okay, I'm going to give more budget to this platform. What happens? Or I'm going to push this one product on Google, for example. Do my sales also get influenced positively? And that's just what you have to do now.
Yeah. Totally. Like, otherwise you're going to lose hair. Like, your hairline's going to just suffer real quick if you're just obsessing over like every single touch point, every single, like it's wild. Cause I mean, like you go into meta advertising, and already there's enough there to keep you really, really busy. Right? What's my hook? What's the offer? What's the create? Like, you spend time there, right? And then go, let me zoom out a little bit and see how that's impacting the ecosystem, and then come back in there again. And then how's Google assisting that? But I completely understand if, especially those that like over specialize in one area, and then there's another area where they bring in another specialist, but they don't know how to talk to one another, or don't know how the assists or the blocks or the intercepts come into play. And clearly you guys can tell I'm not a basketball player. I'm not even using the right lingo probably, but anyway, right, like, yeah, and then, like the touchdowns, and after you go past the line, but point being, like, if they don't know how to talk to one another, I would imagine it'd be quite confusing for a brand owner who then has to take their word for it. Oh, well, my Google specialist is saying this. And then I got another freelancer who's like a paid social specialist. They're saying this, right? And then when I try to put them together, they're kind of saying different things, or they're canvassing for their own platform. So then who's more right? But then when I put two rights together, it becomes wrong. It's like so super confusing, I would imagine.
It is confusing. And we have a lot of instances of that exact same thing happening. But the harsh reality I think we all have to face, like this is the game that we play, is that same instance happening, every single brand goes through that as they grow. Every single brand. So it's not like you're the only one facing this difficulty. Every brand does. For example, so one of our a brand that we work with, they actually have a product that they sell in the wedding niche, where we were running the paid Meta. Actually, another agency was running the Google, and as they were growing, obviously because of different attribution, and obviously different ways how they take credit, one was looking really good. So the brand had the same question. Okay, which one do I allocate more budget to because I want more lift, right? So, for example, in order to do that, the path we had to take was overlaid many different data points in a line graph, for example. One, can we spot any kind of directionality correlation? Okay. Then number two, can we actually do a statistical correlation? Okay. Then number three was, okay, now let's actually test giving more budget to one, less budget to the other. What happens? So in that one instance, this isn't the case for every single situation, but in that one instance, what we found was that the top line revenue was following a nearly identical path with the spend on Meta. Whereas Google, when you plot it out, we actually saw that it was lagging. So as it was increasing budget, the sales were already there. So it looked like it followed that same linear path, but it didn't. And so we actually found that by pulling budget back on Google, nothing really happened. So that's one of two things. One, why is that happening? Are we doing the best thing on Google? And then number two, well, at least we know which one's giving us the highest correlation to our top line sales, or the highest relationship to our top line growth. So it's like, that's the journey you have to go on to identify, where am I going to spend budget? And it's not easy, but that's just the game we play. That's part of running an online brand.
Yeah, totally. But that, and exactly that type of clarity, putting in that kind of work will provide that type of clarity to then be able to make the informed decisions that actually impact your cash flow, because now you're getting clear on where you are spending, where you should be spending or could be spending, but more importantly, how to experiment, because now once you know the methods, then you can start going like, okay, it's not just a YOLO thing anymore, or like lick my finger and be like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. This feels like, it helps us along. I get really nervous when people start making like business decisions off of feelings. I just it just makes me feel so uneasy. There's feels like, and I'm like, oh God, here we go. Feels like, what did the brand end up doing with the, once they found that out? So, did they peel back, or did they change up their shit?
So in that instance, they actually peeled back, because what I found out was that agency was trying to get more discovery through YouTube, spend on YouTube. And so what they ended up doing is they pulled back the spend on YouTube significantly, and when they did that, they found that with shopping and search, they had a bit more of the effect like on top line, but for whatever reason, and it could have been because the creative didn't work well, the target on YouTube didn't work well. There's many different factors why that is, but in that instance, they pulled back YouTube, put more in Meta, and that help solve which one's actually giving us the most incrementality. But in that instance, that's what happened. Now, what I do want to say though is, we have a similar situation going on right now with one of our brands, where we looked, both are driving incrementality, both Google and Meta. We went through all the steps I went through. We actually found that's doing incrementality. So now we have an interesting interesting opportunity of, okay, which one is going to give us more opportunity? So what we're doing right here is we're taking we're taking one product or product line, say, okay, Google, we want you to 3-4x your spend over this month on this one product line. Meta, you're going to focus on this product line, not the same, but this product line, we want you to 3-4x the spend here. And then we're also using no commerce for post-purchase surveys to see which one is going to drives the incrementality, because what we found interesting is that, like a post-purchase survey, a question we ask is, how did you first hear about us? What actually brought you to our site? And they'll be like, Meta, I saw you on TikTok, whatever. But what's interesting is that the Google performance looks so great, but it's one of the worst actual responses. People actually saying they came from Google. And so the hypothesis we have is, maybe it's because people don't think of Google as like a specific channel. And so that's not even what comes to their mind. Because maybe the last touch is Google, but their first experience was TikTok or Meta. And so now we're going through experimenting. Okay, can we still prove incrementality by focusing on totally separate products and increasing the spend that way?
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, because I mean, surveys provide only one data point, and it's not exactly a 100% efficacy kind of data point as well, right? But it helps.
It's recall.
Yeah, exactly. It is recall. And if whenever I get those surveys, I'm like, you're asking the wrong fella. My recall is, I don't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday. This is going to be a challenge. Now it feels like an exam. I'm opting out. I skip those all the time. Like, yeah, if your customer base is a lot of me's, you're going to get like no data, unfortunately.
What's interesting about that though is it helps to shine a light on what they actually remember, right? Recall. For example, I was listening to the Limited Supply podcast, and they had True Classic on there. They had the CEO of True Classic on there, and someone asked that exact question around how do you prove incrementality? And they talked about they do the same thing, post-purchase survey, and this really helped solidify the thought where they said our YouTube current performance is a 0.1 ROAS, 0.1, not 1, 0.1. But we're spending as much or more on that one than anyone else. And so someone asked the question why. And they said, well, because in our survey, we found that people first experience with us was on YouTube. So it created the initial seed that was planted, maybe didn't create the conversion. And so for them, and again, they're playing a different game than most other brands, but for them, that was enough of the proof to prove the incrementality because they want to plant those seeds.
Yeah, for sure. And I like the way that Luke's talking about it now, back at home base with like our strategists, right? It's like thinking about it like an ecosystem rather than just staring at one part of it only helps so much more to make you make confident decisions. Like even though it's a 0.1 viewed in isolation in the ecosystem, it's kicking ass. So let's make sure the ecosystem keeps going.
It's funny you say that. Yeah, Luke often says it's all a system. So you can't make a change to one part of the system and it not affect it, whether positively, negatively. And so you have to think about what's the system as a whole. And part of that is why the most simple you can keep the system, the more you can really understand what's impacting it. And it reminds me of another story, a brand we used to work with. We proved that with a video on it was on Meta. And the attribution looked terrible. It was probably like a 0.3, 0.4, and we turned it off. But what happened is that the sales for that particular product launch catered. And so we come to find out that, again, attribution we see in an ad account may not tell the whole story, which is why we look at different things like contribution margin and new customer CAC and percentage of revenue coming from returning customers, new customers, like these different directional cues that tell us, okay, what's driving the success, and also can we correlate that success to different parts of the business? And that's what I mean by that. It's all a system.
Yeah, totally. If you're not thinking about it like a system, you're pretty much like that gym bro that only trains chest. He just wants to talk about, like everything is just about chest only. And then he just walks around with this like really puffed up chest, but then like chicken legs. You know, like they always look funny. And I always kind of think
they do.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like an inverted Christmas tree.
There was this guy in college. I won't say his name because he might actually listen to this. He follows me on Instagram. He always did chest. He had a massive chest, and we used to call him the hamburger on toothpicks. But he would play this intercollegiate volleyball, right? So playing volleyball, a bunch of people come to watch. And every time we'd ask him, like, "Hey, man, are you gonna do legs today?" He would say, "Nope, chest day," and he was okay with it. But in the volleyball game, because people give him crap for it, he would always just lean in to that weakness. He would pull his shorts all the way up like a girl and just show off his skinny legs because he didn't care what people thought. And I think about that with what you said, like only did chest. He didn't care if he had skinny legs. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew he only wanted a big chest, and that was okay.
Yeah, that is balls. I don't know if I would have those types of balls to just pull those shorts up. I can imagine it right now. Just this dude, super top heavy, shorts like hiked all the way up, playing volleyball. Man, yeah, it's that is wild. I would not be able to do that. I don't have the balls for sure. Yo, you've got, so speaking about this whole like multi-channel thing, you got some Google stuff lined up.
It's funny how I do. It's funny you talked about the updates from the Meta event so a couple things. Google earlier this year in one of their keynotes, they announced this, but now we saw it for the first time rolling out. And this is probably back in the spring. So it took them 5 months to actually begin to roll some of this stuff out. So the first thing is Google actually just launched their own, it's a product studio is what they call it. Now take a look at this, D. It's pretty amazing. And I think you're going to see a lot of similarities with what you saw at the Meta event. So let me find it. Oh, here we go. So check this out, dude. So what they're doing is, so in shopping, you have a product feed, right? In a product feed, you have different attributes, and one of those is the image. So what's really crazy is now they're going to be using generative AI, where you can take your bland product with a white background, and you can use generative AI to put it in different scenes. You can see this right here, like this lip balm. You can put peaches around it to make it stand out. The other thing you can do as well is you can take an image where you have like a product scene and it'll actually etch out the background so you can start fresh with the white background. So the huge benefit here is it's just making it much easier to compete with other big brands that have resources like other designers, because now AI, you can either replace your background that you don't like, as well as you can use AI to make a background. Now, here's what I think is also crazy is Google, they're kind of moving away from, they used to have a requirement like Amazon does right now, where you had to have a product on a white background. But them releasing this, it kind of looks like that they're going to be straying away from that rule, whereas Amazon still has that rule, where they're okay with you using backdrops and different scenes in the background. And to be honest with you, our team has never seen them enforce it, but that's really cool. And so we actually saw it rolled out this past week with some of our brands. So we're beginning to test it. And the benefit to a brand is just by testing the different images in your product feed, you can actually drastically change your performance. So crazy that you saw that at Meta, because Google's been rolling out the same thing.
That's dope. That's
number one.
With what you're sharing right now, is that saying that even if you upload an image to your product feed, that Google now can also up-res it for you?
That's correct. They can make it better quality. Now, we haven't tested that part yet, so to what extent? One thing that is interesting is it doesn't look like Google's going to host the image for you yet. From what we can see, you still have to host it. So, I mean, if you have a Shopify store, you can put images on your store and Shopify will host it for you. So it's not that big of a deal. But, and the other thing too is they're making it easier. You can find it. And so that's update number one. Update number two is they're making it easier for you to split test. Now, the other update that we saw in the wild is the big problem with Performance Max campaigns that our team had for a long time was you couldn't have branded keywords to it. You could have branded keywords, but you have to like email a rep. And if the rep gets back to you, it'll take them like another month or two to add exclusions to it.
You got to know someone who knows someone who knows someone.
Yeah. And I'm hitting up this person who used to be a rep, like, hey, can you talk to your rep friends who are still at Google just to add it? It was like this crazy thing. And so go ahead.
But take a step back for the uninitiated. Can you break down PMAX? Because it sounds
good question.
It sounds like a dick drug. Right. Or it sounds like
it kind of does.
Yeah. It's like, hey, if you going out on a date tonight, have some PMAX.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like a sex chocolate too.
Yeah, totally.
So PMAX is a campaign objective that had it for a little bit, where it's actually Google's attempt to create more discovery. So this is Google trying to compete with Meta a bit, where Meta historically has been a really good discovery platform. And so what Google has done is it's taking all of its properties you can run ads on, so search and shopping and YouTube and Gmail and all those different properties, and it combines it into one campaign where you can upload text ads, your feed, and then creative assets, images and videos, and it will place them on all the platforms based off who they think is going to convert for you. So essentially you're like, here's everything, Google, all my stuff. You go put it in front of people who you think are going to convert based off the data you have about me. So that's what PMAX is. The good about that is it makes it really easy to run ads and to potentially get more lift because it's in more places and exposed to more people. The downside of that is significantly less control and less visibility on the data. So as you can imagine, one of the problems that we had, because before you can't change the targeting, like there is no targeting on it.
Yeah. Which
kind of like a Meta's Advantage Plus.
Which makes control freaks uncomfortable because essentially the TLDR is trust the machine.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So
okay.
It's all hinged on trusting Google.
Gotcha.
Now, we've been using it for a long time, and there's different ways around the control, which I'm happy to share. But one of those that I'm really happy that Google started to roll out is they allow you now to add exclusions. Now, the only exclusions you can add is actual your brand or competitor brand. So you can see right here in the screenshot, you can go into a PMAX campaign you create, and you can add brands that you don't want it showing for. So your brand or competitor brands. Now the benefit here is now what our team is doing is we have a PMAX campaign that with creative assets, we automatically exclude the brand we're advertising for to force Google to go after incremental traffic that doesn't already know about our brand. So that's kind of our way of focusing Google to go after the people who are actually going to drive new customer revenue. And then we have another PMAX campaign where we'll do including branded traffic, especially of competitors' brand on your keywords. So that's a pretty big update. And then also what you can do now is they're rolling out experiments too, where with the PMAX campaign, because this was the other problem where getting a little bit technical, when you first launched PMAX, when they first rolled it out, they were upfront saying it will cannibalize your other campaigns because we're showing favoritism because there's more placements it can be served on. But now what they're allowing you to do is you can split test it without it cannibalizing. So you can actually split test and do more of an incremental lift between a YouTube only campaign PMAX or a PMAX only and a standard, right? So they're listening to advertisers, which I think is really awesome. And just with those two updates, it gives you significantly more control.
Yeah, nice. It's how nice. A platform actually listening to advertisers. It's about damn time. So for someone going in there into like, you know, thinking about jumping into the Google game, right? I mean, like, you know, so much of D2C or e-commerce in general, so much of the conversation happens around social that, you know, they may be, I would hazard more uninitiated, like myself, like in Google paid. What's a good way to start? Especially with this whole PMAX thing, like where's I know that's a really loaded question, right? But if I can try to get you to like kind of strain your brain a little bit and kind of break it down.
Absolutely. So for brands that are just starting on Google, typically how we like to roll it out is we'll start with 4 different types of campaigns. So depending on what you sell, in most brands, if you're not the first to market with your product, there's going to be other ads that are served against your brand name. So we like to start with 4 campaigns. Number 1 is going to be a branded search campaign, but only 10% of the budget goes to branded. We like to do what's called a dynamic search campaign, where you upload different websites and Google will dynamically create ads for you to serve to more people. Then what we'll do is we'll create a shopping campaign, standard shopping campaign, which means that's the traditional shopping campaign, because in this time we've updated the feed, changed the product titles. We want to test images because we care about which keywords you want to be served for, and how you control that is through your feed and what's on your feed, keywords in your theme and stuff like that. Then what we'll do is we'll take a Performance Max and put our best product or our best products in there, because in Performance Max, we see better performance than standard campaign, but the standard campaign we're using to discover what other products do we need to manipulate the feed to make it serve better, what other products are going to rise to the top as a bestseller that we can put in a Performance Max, because Performance Max, we're finding that we can scale harder and scale further with it. In addition, it's also because of the other places it serves, it has potential for more discovery as well. So that's typically what we do for a brand who's just starting out. And then from there, you can evolve it, but it also keeps things very simple, very tight, very manageable. And I think for a lot of brands that are just starting out or trying to go through that, that's where they need to start.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And hot tip for those of you listening or watching that are in charge of uploading images to your product feed, please keep the dimensions the same. Remember that meeting we had at the retention team one, where was it Janelle that was showing that one example, and like the dimensions were all over the shop? So then the formatting for the email design was just all over the shop too, because some were tall, some were short, some were square, some were rectangle. Keep the dimensions all the same. Like,
on your store, guys. Yes.
Don't use image dimensions as your place for creativity. Don't be creative around dimensions. Be creative around other stuff. Keep it the same for sure. That's helpful, dude. So circling back to the conversation we had earlier, how would, maybe if we can break it down and bring it to a head, right? Same thing for someone who's introducing Google into the ecosystem. We've nerded out a bit about it already, but whether you want to break it down into like a tweetable idea, like a digestible thing, how does Google play into social, or social play into, like, how should we think about that? Because like you said, Google has discovery, the YouTube side, right? But there's also like a very strong intent-based thing. So if I'm searching for, I don't know, PMAX help Australia, then, it might, or some product like, okay, that's too esoteric, like coffee cups Australia, then, the shopping would show up, but it's intent-based. I know what I'm looking for, kind of, sort of. Not a specific brand maybe, but that type of product. Whereas social, it kind of goes another way. How can you break that down for us?
Yeah, it's really hard. So it's not hard. It's
bottom line. That's it. It's really hard, guys. Break it down for you. It's really hard.
It's multidimensional. So how we like to think about it is, there's a few ways that are very black and white. If you're a reseller, very simple, you start with Google because there's already intent traffic there. If you have a product, for example, Hexclad, it has a unique value proposition. It also has defined itself as very unique compared to other pans. And so for that one, social is a much better driver because you can take the time to explain and show the uniqueness, right, for discovery. Whereas on Google, you have like a very tiny image and someone types for like the best pans, and you have like, you're competing with all these other images right next to you, and like you don't have enough keyword characters to explain why your pan is so much better. You can use imagery, but that's not enough. So that's why I think for a uniqueness of a product, we feel like you have a reason you want to explain and show off the uniqueness. Social is a much better discovery driver. And then over time, you'll actually discover that Google's a great medium. So I hope that helps. Like that way of thinking about it is really important. So another example, if you are fashion and you sell mom jeans, there is keyword traffic for mom jeans, okay? But keep in mind, someone types in mom jeans size 8. If you have like something special about your mom jeans, like the way it fits or the fabric, like it's gonna be hard to really explain that unless they click on it. Whereas social, you have their attention for those 3 to 4 seconds in the scroll, where it should just where you can actually get that attention in those 3 to 4 seconds of your uniqueness. So I'd say for starting, think like that. But then, however, as you grow and diversify, you can't ignore Google because it has such high intent that number one, you want to capture it. It's right there. Why not capture it? Number two, we see this all the time where discovery from other platforms is the tide that raises all ships. And that's why over time, you'll see not only your branded traffic increase, but you'll see the interest in what you sell increase, even in the non-branded keywords. So my advice to most brands is once you find what that is, pick and focus on that, because a lot of brands diversify too quickly. As a benchmark, and you probably heard me say this before, D, is a brand just really needs one acquisition channel and really strong retention. And that's enough to serve them to 3 to 4 million a year. And then you can diversify. A lot of brands diversify too quickly. Like keep focused, keep what you're good at, scale that, and then it'll just pay you to give you more opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so tempting to go into FOMO mode because this one tweet said that I got to do Google, and this other tweet said that TikTok's super important, and this other tweet said that, hey, Facebook groups, I need to have a community, and then this other one says that, like, influencers are super important too. But it's like, I don't know, how big is your treasure trove, bro? Like, how big is your team? Are you venture backed? Are you bootstrapping this? Like, there's so much context involved, and do you have the smarts to hire the right people to do that type of stuff, or can you just double down? Focus on one will keep you really, really busy as it is, right? And it really just comes down to traffic. Like, you got your traffic, you got your product that's generating some form of average order value. It converts at a healthy enough percentage, and then on the back end you just LTV play it. Like, once you have those pillars in play, it's just that same formula. You're just adding more on the front end and strengthening all the other ones. It's quite manageable that way, as opposed to thinking about it tactically. I think that's where a lot of people lose their stuff. Definitely for me, even in our early days, or in my early days in my career, I definitely went tactically first rather than going like, well, what are the first principles here? Stores need traffic. You need to sell something to that traffic and be convincing enough to convert them at a certain like healthy percentage, right? And then once they've bought your stuff, how do you keep talking to them so that if they like it, they come back for more? Like, you can break it down quite simply in like in a explain like I'm 5 kind of way. Yeah, that's helpful. And for anyone that's watching this that wants to get even nerdy, or it flew completely over your head, we would love to know. Either respond in the comments and said, that was batshit crazy, I did not understand a single piece of that, or that was way too light, I need you guys to go deeper. We will read every single comment and we'll reply to you guys, or email us. And if there's enough demand, we'll do like an actual session, because it's deep. Like Ray says, it's just hard. It is hard. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of dimensions. There's a lot going on. The more channels you have, the more that there is going on. So let us know in the comments. Thanks, Ray. All right, we're getting close to top of the hour. I would love to hear I would love to see what your spot in the wild is. I nominated my original spot in the wild. Last second, I got a last second candidate change.
Oh, you changed?
Yeah, I switched it up.
All right. So yeah, my spot in the wild. So I'm going to show it. It's actually, let me shout out. It's Joshua Ramos. He actually reposted a clip from the Operators podcast. So the main focus is the Operators podcast, but thanks Joshua Ramos for just retweeting a clip. So should we watch it, or should I just tell you what? Because it's about a minute. Should we watch it?
Yeah, let's watch it. I got nowhere to be.
So there's a point to this, and it's funny how things work together. It actually ties in really great to your question on which platform, but it ties into more so from the point of uniqueness of a product. So check this out.
On this is great brands start with a truly superior functional improvement, right? Because yes, like Dyson, Apple, Lululemon, HexClad, like they're all actually best in class, and then they elevate it with fashion or aesthetic or whatever else, right? And what I'm trying to get at is it's really hard to do that with basic t-shirts. It's really hard to do that with hats, right? Like things that are not functionally better off the shelf from China, because like if you build brand around that, you're building brand around the fashion element. That's the only way to do it, right? And there's really great. I'm just talking about, Mad Happy, awesome brand, great stuff. Is it functionally better or is it just sweats, right? And I like Mad Happy, friends with the guy, super good. But that's the thing you have to think about, right? Like, why is Viore crushing it? Like, why is Viore worth $4 billion and going to IPO in 2 years? It's because on the fabric level, they are best in class. And everyone tells me that from Lululemon, from other competitors. They're like, yeah, we wish we were more like Viore from the fabric aspect. So then they can build a brand around that. But I think it has to start with function, like Mike's talking about.
So
that's cool.
One of the things I like it is putting the emphasis on where I think the emphasis should be, especially in this, which channel to focus on is a functionally better product is going to perform on just about any channel you put it on. So I like that focus because it turns the attention to where it really matters. Like the true test of my brand success is back to what is functionally better about it. For example, we've all worked with POD companies, right? Print on demand, t-shirts, hats, whatever. There's nothing functionally better about it. It's a doom loop of just coming up with like the next hot style, the next hot whatever. And that can work, but it's also easily rippable. But I love what they said but the brands that we work with where they were functionally better in some incremental way, those are the ones that regardless of the channel agnostic, the performance follows suit and growing that brand is much, much easier.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's why I love, like before this whole right hook thing, my first venture was in tech, and I've always got such a soft spot for like product led companies or like product first founders, who just like, who have that kind of like crazy eyed Steve Jobs look going on where they just like can't sit easy if it's just not good enough. And I think the ones who get it, because that's the thing about like, so many people talk about like, yeah, Steve Jobs this and Steve Jobs that. He was an asshole. They've got their take on him. But the way that I look at it and I boil it down, it's like he understood design and the interplay between like how much the nerds wanted defined functionality versus where to obsess over like design versus functionality. And then he understood marketing. Like a son of a bitch, he understood marketing. Like, 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? But this is how much he understood functionality and design against marketing. They went and launched a phone that killed their product that put them on like the consumer map. Like the iPhone made the iPod obsolete. Sure, across like almost maybe a decade it took to make that happen. But I'm sure there were internal conversations to be like, this thing is going to make that thing die. The thing that got us on the map in the first place, outside of the Macintosh and all that, which was kind of niche, and like Macintosh cult people loved it. But yeah, the it's so hard. How does the saying go? Like, good product almost like sells itself, but the best marketers, the best marketers will just get dragged down to mediocre marketers if it's a crap product. I'm butchering the quote here, but
you slaughtered it, but we all got the gist.
Yeah. I completely just butchered the hell out of that. All right, let me show you mine. Mine's a bit spicy. So dads, if you guys are watching and your kids and wives are around, you might want to just like pause here or turn your screen away. But let me share it anyway. I'm kind of spoiling it. So all this talk about AI, generative art, et cetera. I was trying to find an example because it's an Aussie audience, right? In Melbourne. I was trying to find an example of one of the feeder questions that my the fireside chat facilitator prompted us with was, where do you think AI is going from a generative standpoint, right? And so this is on the New York Post. It got covered start of this month, and there's this one AI influencer agency out there. I forget their name, but this person, right? Vicki Verano on TikTok, on Twitter, Vicki with an I, Vicki Verano, is not a real person. completely AI. And this, by the way, this one here, I wish this is a screen grab from a video. So if you want to see this video, just go to Vicki Verano on Twitter, search Vicki Verano on Twitter, VICKI, and to prove that it's AI, exactly why they New York Post took the screenshot. You can see how janky the fingers are. Like she's putting her fingers together, but in this one screenshot, that finger got split in half. Yeah. But anyway,
did they say what platform they're using? That's better than Midjourney. I'm curious to know what platform it is.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's a multi-stage. So it's generated in one area and then taken to like an 11 Labs or something for something else, and then all the other different places. But so the stills, you can kind of see that it's like overly photoshopped a little bit. So it might look like just, a really over photoshopped image. But yeah, this is generated by an AI influencer agency. So they manage influencers, but they're not humans. They're just AI. I think my bet, I'm not deep enough into that world to completely understand how it works. My bet is there's still an actual human going through these actions, but it's just a complete overlay. So face, hair, yeah, they're still moving, right? They're still moving and stuff like that, but everything else would be AI, which is just wild. So in this one, by the way, if you go onto the Twitter, she's not selling anything. There's no link to an OnlyFans. There's no link to a product. There are no brand collabs to my knowledge. So the captions are all like this, right? Like even though the image is not found, it's like, I love this vacation. It has 4 of my favorite things. And then if you click on hit there, you see like text would be like, I'm just here for a good time, or hello from the beach. Like no salesy things whatsoever. I think they're trying to prove the concept, right? The people that run that business. Yeah. So if you go there, this one video specifically with this one bikini top, it's her talking about what she likes about the bikini. So it's like one of those haul videos where it's like, hey, I like this one because it fits really snug, and she turns around and like shows her behind and then comes back in the front again, shows her sides. So it's really dynamic movement. And if you're caught up in the whole thing, you wouldn't even know that it's like legit.
Have you seen the movie Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is the future, guys. It's all coming where, I'm okay with it. But you have influencers where they're not real, they're avatars, they're VR, they're AI made. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like that Tom Cruise deepfake guy. I don't know if you've seen him.
Oh yeah, it's actually really good.
He does the voice like pretty on point too.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's all coming down the pipe. So I think parting message there from this spot in the wild is like, if you run a brand, or if you're a creative, or if you're in ads, or if you live in our world in any kind of way, just go start an account in Midjourney. Like go play with the tools, even though quote unquote, they're not there yet. Like those type of comments, I'm not going to use it because they're not quite there yet. I don't want to waste my time. You're not really wasting your time because you're getting to see, follow along.
It's not there maybe in video quite yet, but shoot, our team is playing it with statics for freaking ads. And,
yeah.
And some of them look really good. And statics for email too. Yeah.
Or if you want to make it more real, talk to all the people that invested in Bitcoin when it wasn't there yet.
Yeah. I wish I was one of those.
Yeah, I wish I was one of those too, right? Like it's always in retrospect, you're like, man, I should have known that it would have gotten there. It's like, yeah, well, the signs are all here, guys. This AI thing is not slowing down.
The fact that it's already being implemented. So, Notion has AI implemented. That's copy, right? You've got Google has AI, which we talked about on the show. You've got Meta's doing it. Let's talk about in the show. I was showing my wife, I forget who it was, but there's a guy who made a Lord of the Rings trailer. And I forget who it was, like a Lord of the Rings trailer and some aesthetic. It actually looked really good. A full trailer using AI. So, and then if you watched the show, what is it? It's on Disney with Nick Fury. The most recent Marvel show they launched. The intro is all a generative AI as well. So like there's a lot of cues to tell you that this is already here and it's already coming. And it's only a matter of time before you can pick whatever model you want, put your product designs, and then that model, that AI model actually uses that product. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, 100%. And just so that you don't complain, watchers, that no one told you where to go, and you don't want to, you're too lazy to search generative AI tools, which I completely understand. I was one of those people. Midjourney, of course, please go try that. DALL-E is the next one, DALLE. For video, for text to video, Runway ML, runway like a fashion runway, Runway ML, machine learning ML, and Kyber, Kaiber, are those four tend to be the pop ones, I guess, if you call it. There are a whole bunch of other niche ones, but that's a good place to start. Go play around with those like today. And you want to get really wacky, take the stuff you generate from Midjourney, throw it into Runway and see what happens there. And then if you want, take a screenshot from the Runway, throw it back into Midjourney as your seed image, and then regenerate again. And now you've got like an ecosystem. And then if you run out of prompts, go to ChatGPT and ask it for a few other prompts. And now you've got like some weird, awesome thing going on. Your micro little 3 AI agents just working for you. And then eventually you might turn yourself into Vicki Verano too. Like, who knows? All right, I think that's the show.
Yep, good job, man. That's a good pod.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, everyone, we are done for this episode. We'll see you in the next one. Who knows what the next one's going to be about? More Vicki Veranos in the wild, but definitely more raw stuff from Right Hook. See you next time.